This is indeed a disturbing universe.
Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Hello, greetings and welcome. Welcome to the Stereo 999 YouTube channel. I'm your host, the artist formerly known as Stereo Steve, and we are continuing on with the 70 Albums project. And this week we're going to do 1983 to 1992.
1983.
A merman I shall turn to be. 1983. What a year for music. There's just so much. There's just so much. I could probably off the top of my head think of like 40 impactful albums from 1983. But the album I'm going to talk about because the other day was Record Store Day.
1983 Texas Flood, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble.
Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble. Debut album, Texas Flood. Some rockin' blues. He was kind of wrested from obscurity by David Bowie when he was hired to play on the Let's Dance album. And nobody was thinking about rockin' blues guitarists in the 80s. That was probably seen as a thing of the past, a thing of the 70s, a thing of the 60s. And this was not really getting played on the radio, but for a while, when this was released in 1983, every time I went into a record store, this album would be playing. And this might just be the first album that I bought solely based on hearing it playing in a record store. So here's to record stores, and here's to the great Stevie Ray.
1984 Meat Puppets to Meat Puppets.
The Meat Puppets. They were a band that I championed when everybody I knew hated them, except for a small circle of my friends. That was when we were fans of their extremely chaotic first single and their first album. Some of the more cynical people back then told me that they were just making fun of hardcore punk. People who were into more mainstream rock thought their dissonance was an abomination. But then with this second album, they turned around. You know, there were little hints. There were little hints at the musical sophistication that they were capable of, kind of hidden like Easter eggs in their punky early stuff. And if you went to any of their gigs and saw some of the surprise cover songs that they would bring. But Meat Puppets too, they're getting into this kind of laid back stoner kind of country rock. Big influence on Kurt Cobain, obviously, because he in his famous Unplugged concert for Nirvana, he brought members of the Meat Puppets on stage and covered some of their songs off of this album. But yeah, it's not a perfect record. It sounds like the picture on the back cover looks.
1985 Fables of the Reconstruction, REM.
Rapid Eye Movement, REM from Athens, Georgia. And for me, it was really their debut album that made an impact. But this album showed that they were not going to just stay in the same direction the entire time. For this album, they went to England and recorded with Fairport Convention producer Joe Boyd in an attempt to make a little more folky, laid-back album. And They had a hit song with "Can't Get There From Here," and they had a really creative introduction with "Feeling Gravity's Pull." Just, yeah, still masters of the catchy song, but a little more atmospheric and a little more introspective than their first two albums.
1986 Master of Puppets Metallica.
Correct. Master of Puppets by Metallica. And I think you're going to start to sense a little bit of a pattern forming here with albums that are not the band's first album or the real breakthrough album. I mean, the 1-2 punch of Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning showed the heaviosity that this band was capable of. Then Master of Puppets showed little twinges of progressive rock in the structures of the songs, especially the title track. And this was kind of the one that won me over. Not much to say about it. I mean, you know, it's still regarded as a classic. You know, the trilogy of the first three albums are really the core of Metallica. Though what I've heard of their new one that just came out is pretty good. Pretty good. Are you just gonna leave that stupid bird thing up there? Yes. Yes, I am. Get off. Crunching. Crunching the ice.
1987 Sister Sonic Youth.
Yeah, this album got a lot of rotation in 1987. 1987 was another kind of intense year for me. And, you know, Sonic Youth, you know, the Evil album before this was a revelation for me and some of my friends. And this album just kind of streamlined the sound of that. And there were songs that just became like the soundtrack of the summer of '87. Usually this picture is blacked out because this was by a famous photographer and they didn't have permission to use it. But yeah, Sister, you know, this was, you know, a lot of people consider Daydream Nation to really be their breakthrough album, but this one's just got some great songs. Cotton Crown and Schizophrenia. But yeah.
1988 It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, Public Enemy.
Yeah. This was one of those records that for those of us ignoramuses who didn't really pay attention to hip hop, like it was a revelation that there was more to it than we thought, which is years earlier how I felt when I first heard The Message by Grandmaster Flash. But this album was another. This album was the soundtrack to 1988, almost the way Sonic Youth was the soundtrack to 1987. I mean, it's got Don't Believe the Hype, She Watched Channel Zero, the way they used samples, and just the way Chuck D and Flavor Flav kind of played off each other. And this is just a solid album through and through.
1989 Doolittle Pixies.
Yeah, Pixies. Their first album, Surfer Rosa, was a revelation when I heard. I guess this is going to be the word that I keep saying is revelation. Just like last week, I listened back and I realized I kept saying classic over and over again. And I'm just like, okay, I'm I'm flowing. I mean, it's just evidence that there's no script. I'm just talking out of my ass here. But anyway, you know, I heard the Pixies' first album, Serve for Rosa, at a party, and it was like, oh, this is on 4AD? This doesn't sound like COCTEAU Twins. But again, it was a case of, you know, the first album kind of made some waves, and then the second album just kind of hammered home that this was a band that was gonna do some important stuff. But again, classic songs, Monkey's Gone to Heaven, Here Comes Your Man, Gouge Away. I mean, specific memories of 1989, but the songs are also still timeless. And again, you know, it was like 1989, and these guys kind of set the template for what a lot of underground alternative bands in the 90s were going to kind of strive for. These just kind of tight and catchy and dynamic songs. Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
1990 Torch of the Mystics, Sun City Girls.
Sun City Girls from Arizona, going back, coming out of the Phoenix punk scene, but doing something a little different. You know, a lot of fancy guitar playing, a lot of ethnic music influences, a lot of dark humor, and when I first heard this album, you know, I was pretty familiar with earlier albums like Torch of the Mystics and their debut. Those kind of fell by the wayside and went out of print. And when I first heard this album, I mean, there was definitely a musical quality to it, kind of an otherworldliness. It was a little bit, the production was a little trebly. I kind of wanted more bass. But the songs lived on, and this album kind of became, like most people who are fans of this band's go-to album. The Bishop Brothers did a lot of unearthing of foreign music. You know, I think they were involved in that Sublime Frequencies record label. If you like stuff like Khruangbin and stuff like that, and you want to hear something a little more raw and gritty in that kind of vein, Sun City Girls, Torch of the Mystics. A lot of stone cold classics in this decade here.
1991 Loveless, My Bloody Valentine.
Okay, what can be said about this album? This album is shoegaze classic. And for me, their previous album Isn't Anything. That was another case of a record that I heard playing in the store and just had to buy it right then and there. Loveless seemed a little more atmospheric to me compared to that album. To ears that are not accustomed to it, sounds like just distorted mush. But then there's like a crystalline kind of beauty underneath the mush. A lot of great rockin' shoegaze heavy songs on this album, which promised. This album was a promise of good things to come, but then the wait for the next album was a little too long.
1992 Selected Ambient Works 8592 Aphex Twin.
Aphex Twin's Selected Ambient Works. Richard D. James, very prolific electronic music artist. this collection of his earliest works has kind of taken on its own life. I mean, this is the album most people start with, and it's ambient, but the songs have a beat. You can tap your foot to them. We Are the Music Makers, Tha, Aegeus Polis, which I don't know if I pronounced that right, but D. Antwoord sampled that song. But anyway, this is the place to start with Aphex Twin, and this again this one's a debut, where a lot of the other ones are sophomore albums in this list. But yeah, this album was a complete album, and it also showed a lot of potential for where this would go. Of course, Ambient Works Volume 2, the double CD that came out later, is more traditional ambient music in the Brian Eno background space music kind of way. But yeah, this was the beginning of ambient electronic music with a beat to it. So that's my little retrospective from 83 to 92, one album per year. And stick around, I'll be back.
Oh yeah, that's just fine. Come on, boys, just one more time.
That's mine, and I'm still drinking it slow.
digging for. Oh, pigeon, what's under the drain? Are you insane? Oh, pigeon, let me introduce you to my foot. There he goes.
The amazing record vacuum by Ronco, the new stereo accessory that protects all your records. Simply insert your record into the record vacuum, turn it on, and your record rotates automatically, sweeping and vacuuming your records instantly, loosening deep damaging microdust particles, 33 1/3, 45, 78.
(1983). What a year for music. There's just so much. There's just so much. I could probably off the top of my head think of like 40 impactful albums from 1983.
Oh yeah, that's just fine. Come on, boys. Just one more time. Hot hits! Hot hits!
Yeah, the bus is going up one of them infamous steep San Francisco hills. Slowly but surely. Slowly, but don't call me Shirley.
Charlie! Charlie!
I'm right here. What do you want?
We're on a bridge, Charlie! We're here!
Thrill House Records. Yes, here we are at the legendary Thrill House.
Come on, baby. Come to Papa.
Let's see if that wind blows the thing in front of there.
Well, it's not gonna get in front of the.
Oh yes, yes, my good friend, of course.
Well, maybe it will. Maybe it will. There we go.
Got me?
Yeah, I got you.
All right. So this is day after Record Store Day, where I went to a couple of stores to see if they had the thing I was looking for, and they didn't. But I did get some records. Went to the notorious Thrill House Records on on Mission Street. And I found this original copy of the Kinks' Roswell Hillbillies.
This is a great record.
Yeah. Even better if it wasn't falling out. There we go. Yeah, Roswell Hillbillies from the Kinks. This was their first album on the RCA label after they left Reprise. It's a wobbly Dynaflex pressing.
It's got Holloway Jail, which is my favorite piece.
Yeah, 20th Century Man, Alcohol, Complicated Life, which it is. And also at Thrill House, I got a copy of The Omen. Because I can't believe I actually never saw this whole movie all the way through. Because you know how I like The Exorcist. You know how we watch some obscure evil child movies like Kathy's Curse and The Visitor. But yeah, I got The Omen. And these are the records I got from the guy selling records on the sidewalk. Shake Your Booty on Kid Stuff Records. Shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Shake your booty. Alright, just to really get the party started. And this is Simon and Garfunkel, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. This was their first album as Simon and Garfunkel. This has the original acoustic version of Sounds of Silence, where later on producer Tom Wilson overdubbed a band and released it as a single. This has the original acoustic version. And yeah. Last week I was talking about getting burned on a record. I bought Some Enchanted Evening, and it had a scratched up disc of On Your Feet and On Your Knees instead. And I was pissed because I wanted Astronomy. And Astronomy is on this. And yeah, if I could think of one good Blue Oyster Cult record that's been missing from my collection, it would be this one. It's got some of my favorites here. Dominance and Submission, Career of Evil, Flaming Telepaths. Remember that band Espers?
Yeah.
Espers did a really good cover of Flaming Telepaths, Stretched Out. Yeah. And last but not least, and this is again from the guy selling records on the sidewalk, this was the Holy Grail record. Shoes. You know the Shoes? Yeah, power pop classic. This was their living room home recorded album. And I've been a fan of the Shoes' second album, Present Tense, ever since high school. But I was today years old when I finally saw an original copy of their first album. And now I'm holding. It's got the lyrics on the PVC label.
Yeah, but show the photos on the backside.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. I'm gonna drink the rest of this beer and stop the camera and then play a little music. Yeah. Cheers. Here's the thing, though. People are complaining about how much the world has changed. You know, how dystopian everything is. And I'm looking back at some of the stuff that's kind of heavy on my mind. And I'm thinking, I could be having the exact same conversation with different people in 1987 and being left with the exact same subtle shade of hopelessness. So, is it that the world is changing too much, or is it that the world hasn't changed enough? Or is it just me who never adapts?
Man, he must be having a bad trip.